enjoyed Strina of the women, Mandala Mandana, as the central beauty of the assembly of women. Translation. In the third season of the year, the Lord enjoyed as the central beauty of the assembly of women by attracting them with his pleasing songs in an autumn night brightened by moonshine. Purport. Before leaving the land of cows, Vrindavan, the Lord pleased his young girlfriends, the transcendental gopis, in his Rasalila pastimes. Here Uddhava stopped his description of the Lord's activities. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. Durga me parimindasya skalapate gatir mohu svakripa yustu danina santa santa valambanam om agyanatimirandasya jananjana salakaya chaksurun militam yena tasmei shri gurave namaha. Thank you very much for being here. I am going to say something about the full moon night, the Rasa Leela dance here. Usually devotees don't like to talk about this because it's only meant for qualified people who are fully controlled, whose senses are fully controlled, who can understand the purport of the nature of the pastimes between Krishna and the gopis, but somehow or other this sloka has fallen upon me, and there's also a good reason for describing these pastimes there, to enlighten devotees and give bliss in the right context. And despite my shortcomings and not being qualified to do so, I am going to attempt to say something about this, and I pray that I am forgiven for all my offences by the deities and by my spiritual master. So, having said that, this sloka is the last shloka where Sukadeva Goswami talks about Krishna's pastimes, and the Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport here, before leaving the land of cows, Vrindavan, the Lord pleased the young girlfriends, the transcendental gopis, in his Rasa Leela pastimes. So the gopis were always thinking of Krishna, and this whole Leela come about a little bit earlier on. Now I'm getting a lot of my information from Indradumna Maharaj, and there's one wonderful story I want to get to very quickly also, but the Rasa dance was a promise was made by Krishna. It goes back to the pastime. If you read it in the Krishna book, it's there. Krishna steals the garments of the gopis. I don't know if you've read that chapter, but Krishna was very, you might say he was very cheeky as a young boy, but there was a purpose, because it was winter, and in winter time it was recommended that if a young chaste lady wanted to marry a very, very handsome man, qualified man, that they worshipped the goddess Chandika in the river by immersing themselves in the river in the middle of winter. So all the gopis, of course, they wanted Krishna as their husband. They were meditating on Krishna, so they were worshipping the goddess in the middle of the river there. And on their last, it was for a month, a whole month. So on the last day of the month, Krishna appeared, and he stole all their clothes on the bank of the river. So the gopis were very cold and saying, "Why are you doing this to us?" He said, "I'm just fulfilling all your desires." So then one by one they had to get their clothes back of Krishna. And at that point in time, he promised them that he would fulfill all their desires. So this was with the intention of having a rasa dance with the gopis. Rasa means pastime, a dance with all these gopi friends on a full moon on Kartik night. So that was quite a ways away. So that promise was there. So when that time actually came around, there was another pastime that was going on, another Leela, and that was the Leela of Govardhan, where Krishna had interrupted King Indra's yajna, and as we know, Mukunda Maharaj was speaking about yesterday, King Indra became very upset and poured incessant rains upon Govardhan, and Krishna lifted Govardhan for 7 days. So on the 8th day, King Indra brought Surabhi, cow, and he apologised profusely. On the 9th day, all the residents of Vrindavan, all the elderly gopas come together and they discussed what was Krishna's position actually. Who was he? Is he really the son? Was he really the son of Nanda Maharaj? How is it that he performs these amazing pastimes? So they were doubting this. So on the next day, Krishna revealed his universal form to all the gopas in the Kuragat, and by that time the full moon had passed, so the opportunity to have a rasa dance was missed, and they had to wait another year. So they had to wait nearly 2 years to perform this rasa dance. Krishna performed the rasa dance with the gopis, and by that time he was 8 years old. Right, so this rasa dance actually came about. Indra Maharaj just tells us that one time Krishna was walking along the forest and he saw a banyan leaf near a pomegranate tree, and he picked up the banyan leaf, and it was a message from Radha explaining how she felt so much love for him and she was in so much separation from him. And when Krishna read this letter, he decided to hold the rasa dance. So on the next full moon, where he came out and he played his flute specifically for Radha. Radha came first, as Indra Maharaj explains this, and he played such a beautiful, wonderful melody that had never ever been heard before on this earth planet. And he drew Radha to him, and after that he summoned the gopis, and then all the other gopis followed, except for the sages of Dandakaranya, who also got the benediction to be gopis, but they never got to go into the rasa dance. I don't know why. I know there's an explanation. If anybody knows, they can tell us later on. So they were all assembled there, but there were different groups of gopis. If you read about it, that there was the goddesses of fortune gopis, and there was also the Jiva Tattva gopis, ones from in Ayodhya Dham who were infatuated by Lord Ram and were promised that they'd take birth as gopis in his next incarnation. There was the tribal girls from, I can't remember now, I haven't studied, but there were different groups. There was like so many different groups. And there was a little bit of discord there because some of the gopis were very proud of the fact that they were there with Krishna, and they were equating themselves on the same level as Radha. Now, Radha was just there to please Krishna, and she wanted a really nice dance and everybody to be happy, but there was some tension there that wasn't really coming together. So Krishna observed that Radha was unhappy. So to establish the fact that Radha is the prime gopi, the queen of all the gopis, he took her away and he left all the other gopis behind. So the gopis were all disappointed, and they were making some sort of comments, oh, he's taken that special girl with him, and they were a little bit jealous like that. And then they went looking for Krishna. Where did he go? Where did he go? So gradually as they closed in on Krishna and Radha in some bower there, Krishna said, quick, they're coming now, let's go somewhere else. And then Radha, she put it to Krishna that please carry me. She said, Krishna, you please carry me. And Krishna just noticed that there was a small sense of pride, and the sages say that she was contaminated when she went to the arena. She was a little bit contaminated by the atmosphere of the gopis there, and that was there. But it was a rasa. Radha, of course, is always pure, never contaminated, but Krishna used this as a pretext that he left Radha too. So he disappeared. So then all gopis, they come across and they saw Radha, and then they saw the mortified personification of Radha, how she was just lamenting about her absence, how Krishna left her, and the tears were just streaming from her eyes, the intense separation, all the different moods, the different feelings, the bodily features, and they were just stunned. Just said, this gopi loves Krishna more than we ever will. Her intensity is so great. So once again they understood that Radha is the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. So that's always the case, because Radharani, she's the queen of Vrindavan, and she's a supreme servant of Krishna. So I just want to establish this fact even more, just like if you've ever been to Mayapur Temple and you gaze upon the beautiful deities of Radha and Krishna, you'll see the eight Shaktis, four on either side, and they're all staring at Radha. They're not staring at Krishna, they're just staring at Radha. What does Radha want to please Krishna? And this is the nature. And these principal gopis, Lalita Vishaka, Tungavidya, Sudevi, Rangadevi, Chitra, Champakalata, I missed one, but they're all looking towards Radharani. And what to speak of all the other gopis that serve them. And there's two types of gopis actually. There's the gopis that are personally associating with Krishna, and most of them are the Lakshmis, goddesses of fortune. Other fortunate ones are living entities that got the benediction to take birth as gopis, the gopi associates of Krishna. And then there's thousands and thousands of gopis that serve them. They're called the Manjaris. So the Manjaris are the younger gopis. I believe they're prepubescent, and they serve all the other gopis whatever is needed, whether they have to fetch something, make some flowers or whatever. And our lineage, we're in the lineage of Lord Chaitanya, but sometimes we're also called Rupanugas, that we follow in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, because all the Shastras all come from the 6 Goswamis. We have their picture on the altar, and we're following in their footsteps, dancing, chanting like madmen, we're glorifying Krishna. And Rupa Goswami is also a Manjari. It's a song about Rupa Manjari. He's a Manjari in Krishna Leela. Our Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, the spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, he's also a Manjari. There was one great Babaji called Vamsi Babaji, who was always by the banks of the Ganges, very, very austere and totally absorbed in Krishna. He was looked after by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, and whenever Bhakti Siddhanta came close, Vamsi would only talk to his deities. He'd address everybody through his deities. Oh, this person is here, they want that. And he'd talk to his deities. He said, oh, here come the Manjaris now. Whenever he saw Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So these Manjaris are the young assistants up to the age of 13 in the spiritual world, and the gopis are 14 or 15 around. They're all within a couple of weeks, born within a couple of weeks of Radharani. And then as we know, there's Sahasram, where we pray in the morning. What's the first word? Sahasranam. What's the first word? The Brahma Samhita. Sahasra Chaksu Sangrahantam Govindam. Sahasras. So thousands and millions of gopis that are there to serve, hundreds and thousands of cows, unlimited. So the point being made there is Vainam Konantam Aravindar Taksham Bhagavatam Samachitum Purusumdarangam. No, that's the other one. Huh? Chintamani Prakarasa Vasu Kalpa Vriksha. Yeah, beautiful place, Vrindavan, Kalpa-vriksha trees, and thousands of Lakshmi maidservants, Lakshmis, milkmaids. So Krishna's got a relationship with everyone, the manjaris, and if everybody pleases Radha, then they're sublimely, transcendently happy. So it's all about pleasing Srimad Radharani, and all these gopis are all uniquely talented in so many different ways and all the different arts that are available for the pleasure of Krishna. So now all the gopis are together and they're looking for Krishna. Krishna's disappeared, and they're asking the trees and they're asking the creepers, where is Krishna? Have you seen Krishna? And so they were closing in on Krishna, because one thing about Krishna is he's not very good at hiding, because Krishna's got this effulgence. So wherever he goes, there's this effulgence come from Krishna, especially in the night, so they're closing in on him. So at one point then Krishna thought he'd disguise himself as Mahavishnu. So he's there in his four-armed Vishnu form, and the gopis close in on him and say, oh, Mahavishnu, they pay their obeisances to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu, have you seen Krishna? So Krishna actually became embarrassed, and the intensity of the questioning by the gopis, he couldn't hold it together, so he reverted back to his form as Krishna. So they went back to that place where they were performing the rasa dance. The main place for the rasa dance is Seva Kunj, and it's said that they danced in harmony, and it was all so blissful that it went for one night of Lord Brahma. So it just went, it just took so long, one night of Lord Brahma. And then of course, when morning on the third planet came, they all returned back to their places in Vrindavan, went out and milked the cows and looked after the cows. So this is Krishna's eternal pastimes, and it's said that they're still going on in Vrindavan. If we go to Vrindavan, we can't see them because we have material bodies, material eyes, so we don't have the spiritual sight to perceive or witness these pastimes. So they are going on. So there is a crossover where one devotee, I want to talk about this now, there is a crossover where one devotee actually witnessed the pastimes of Krishna in the spiritual world and came back to tell us about it. And it is said that here that we should describe the pastimes as devotees, so it serves as a great inspiration for all the other Vaishnavas that are taking birth here in this particular age of Kali Yuga and beyond. So one devotee was really given the mercy, and this happened shortly after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared from the planet in a village called Ambik Kund, I think. Is it Kund? Ambik Kund. There was a Brahmin family there, and they wanted to have children there. And it appeared that every time one of their children were born, they'd be taken by Yamaraj. They'd die. They had three, 4 children, and they all passed away. So they're very disheartened. So they had one more child, and they called him Dukhi Krishna Das. And Dukhi means sad. Dukhi Krishna Das. So they said, this is a very sad child. Yamaraj doesn't need to take a sad child, so leave this sad child with us. He's called Dukhi. So Dukhi Krishna Das, he grew up and he was a very, very brilliant scholar. And he learnt the Shastras, and then he was a great devotee of the Lord Krishna. So he took shelter of one very powerful devotee called Hriday Chaitanya Das, who was living there in Algarve. Very powerful devotee. There's a whole chapter on him. Dumna Maharaj speaks about him. And he became his disciple. So his service was that he had to fetch water from the Ganga, pots on his head, and it was for serving the deities, his spiritual masters, deities Radha and Krishna. And Dukhi was so absorbed in his service, in so much ecstasy, that was directly serving Krishna by fetching him water, for the deities. He was singing, and he was so wrapped up in it that after some time he'd carry the pots on his head quite a few times a day. His head started to develop sores, but he didn't notice that, and he kept on with his service, and then it became infected, and there was worms coming from his head, right? Falling from his head, and then he was still oblivious to that. He was still carrying the pots, but the spiritual master, Hriday Chaitanya, saw that some worms fell on the ground there, and he looked at his head, and he was aghast, and he was just so impressed with the intensity of the mood of service of his disciple. And he touched his head, and his head was immediately healed. This is the power of this devotee. And Indradumna Maharaj mentions at this point in time that the pure devotees, they have these shaktis, they have the mystic potencies, but that's a distraction, because they don't want to go around showing these mystic potencies, because it detracts from the real thing, which Krishna, establishing Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not about showing mystic potencies. It's about telling everybody about Krishna's wonderful pastimes. So he became healed, and after a period of time, he asked his spiritual master if he could go to Vrindavan. So his spiritual master agreed and told him to take shelter of Jiva Goswami, who's still one of the last Goswamis on the planet. So Jiva Goswami, he took shelter, and he had a cave to live in. He was living in a cave underground, completely absorbed in the chanting of Krishna's names, totally absorbed. And Jiva Goswami was so impressed by the intensity of his service, he gave him the service of sweeping Sevakunj. So, who's been to Sevakunj? It's in the middle of Vrindavan. Anybody who goes to Vrindavan goes to Sevakunj. That's where Krishna performed his Rasa Leela pastimes. The principal place where Krishna performed his Rasa Leela pastimes with the gopis. And Sevakunj is bricked off, there's a big fence around it, and no one's allowed there at night. So Krishna and the gopis can have the privacy of having a rasa dance at night there. And it is said that actually if anybody goes to Sevakunj at night, they become mad. They just go mad. So they lock the door, nobody's allowed in there. So he was so delighted with this service that, first of all, he was taking the water for his spiritual master to serve the deities. Now he's in Sevakunj, actually sweeping the dust. He's thinking, this is the dust that Krishna and the gopis are actually walking on. And he immediately began to roll in the dust, and tears are coming from his eyes, and he was just totally ecstatic about his service. And he proceeded to clean the kunj in that mood of ecstasy. So one night, in the unmanifested on the unmanifested platform, on the spiritual platform, the Seva Kunja platform that we can't see with the material eyes, the rasa dance was going on. It was very intense. It got really got very intense. And Radharani, in the middle of it, she lost one of her ankle bracelets. And it was a ankle bracelet on the left. It had a name. It was called Manju Gosha, and she was very attached to it. And she only found out when they left that place and went back to their abode. And then she noticed in the morning, just as Dukhi Krishna was arriving to clean the kunj. So Radharani sent one of her principal gopis, Lalita Das, Lalita's very close to Radharani. Normally it's a job, normally it's a service that they get the manjaris to do, but there was going to be a special rasa happening here. So Radharani realised this, so she sent Lalita to handle this rasa. So in the meantime, Dukhi Krishna's cleaning, and he saw this effulgence under a pomegranate tree there, and he cleared away the leaves, and lo and behold, there's this beautiful bracelet, this golden bracelet studded with sapphires, and it said it was emanating an odour that was from another world, otherworldly fragrance. And it was a little bit wedged in the ground, so he got his spade. He had a spade to sort of move things around, save a kunj, and he touched the bracelet with his spade, and the spade turned gold, 24 carat, pure gold. Right? And then at that point in time, there was a voice in the sky, and Akash said, "Keep this anklet carefully." So, taking great heed of that, he wrapped the bracelet, the anklet, in his cloth, and he was keeping it there. So shortly after that, Lalita arrived disguised as a simple gopi, and she announced herself. She saw Dukhi there, and she knew that he was the cleaner, and she asked, she introduced herself. She says, "My name is Radha Dasi. I'm a Kanya Kubji Brahmani from Yavat, and my sister was here last night picking flowers. Just in the afternoon she was picking flowers, and she heard the roar of a tiger, and she became afraid, and she ran away, and she lost her anklet somewhere. Have you seen the anklet?" So Dukhi looked at her, and he was thinking, simple colored girl from Yavat, eh? And he said, yes, I do have the anklet, but what really sort of confuses me is how can a simple girl from a village have this beautiful anklet, very precious anklet? And Lalita, she's a fiery. Lily's always very fiery. She's giving cheek to Krishna all the time. So she sort of becomes a little bit fiery. She said, "What? You think just because we're simple cowherd girls that we don't have something special like these bracelets?" And so he sort of looked at her, and he thought that she was something special too. So he wouldn't give her the bracelet. He said, "Well, look, if that's the case, you take me to your sister, and I'll give you the bracelet back personally." So then Lalita was thinking, "I'm wasting time here. Radharani wants me back here." So she said, "All right, I'll take you to your sister. I'll take you to my sister." So she took her to Lalita Kunj, which is Kund. It's a bathing place very close by. And said, "Now you take bath in there." And he's thinking, "Wait a minute, why should I take bath? I already had a bath, and you want me to take bath just to see your sister in the village? What's going on?" So Lalita couldn't take it anymore, so she revealed herself, her true form, to him. And when he saw Lalita, he just fainted. He completely, saw this most beautiful lady that is just beyond words, and he passed out. So then she woke him up, and she put him in the kund, and he bathed in the kund. And when he came out of the kund, he had the body of a gopi. beautiful gopi, right? Clothes and everything. And then he looked around and he'd been transported to that ephemeral spiritual world. He's in there with Radharani and all her associates. And Vishak was next to Radharani, and she said, Kanaka Manjari, welcome home, like that. And Duki, or Kanaka Manjari, Duki / Kanaka Manjari looked around. He became overwhelmed by the inconceivable grandeur of the sweet rural atmosphere surrounding him, and he couldn't speak. He actually fainted. And all the gopis were giggling away like this, watching him faint. And then Lalita revived him and said, well, Kanaka, now do you believe that my sister is qualified to own the bracelet? And he was speechless, so Kanaka immediately grabbed the bracelet and he was about to give it to Radharani, and Radharani grabbed his one hand, and with the other hand she took the bracelet. And she said to him, I'm very pleased with your devotional service in Seva Kunj. And she got the anklet and she put a stamp on his forehead. There was this impression of a lotus foot on the bracelet, and that impression came onto his forehead. That was his tilak marking. And then she got a grounding piece of marble ground, and then she ground some sandalwood camphor honey and made a gopi dot, and just with the bracelet put on his forehead. So that tilak's called Sham Mohan Tilak, and that was the tilak on the gopi. And she said to the gopi, from this day on you're going to be known as Shyamananda. Right? And Shyamananda means one who gives pleasure to Radharani, one who gives bliss to Radharani. And she said to Shyamananda, return and tell everyone about this. So that was the message, so we can all understand that there is a spiritual world there in Vrindavan, up above our material vision there, and it is eternal, it is always there. So Shyamananda, he couldn't take it. He said, leave the spiritual, I've just got your service, I've just attained the highest realm here, and you want me to go back? He couldn't take it. He started crying, tears were coming out of his eyes, and Radharani felt sorry for him. So out of her heart, she manifested this beautiful deity of Shyamasundra, Krishna deity of Shyamasundra, said, look, take this back to the spiritual world with you, and you worship him, and that will relieve all your anxieties. And then when you finish in this world, in this material world here in your body, then you can come back here and take part in the pastimes of Radharani. So then he paid his obeisances, and when he looked up, they were all gone. And he was back in Seva Kunj in his devotee clothes there, but he was clutching the deity of Shyamasundra, right? And he still had a golden spade, 24 carat spade, it was still there, right? And so he grabbed the deity, grabbed the spade, and went running back to his spiritual master Lokanath, to Jiva Goswami to tell him all about it. And it is said that the devotees, the pundits say that this story should be narrated to everyone so we can understand that the unmanifested spiritual world is always there in Vrindavan. When we go there, it's still there. So therefore we have to be careful, because we know that Krishna's there still. So when we go to Vrindavan, we understand that even though the material aspect of it is there, still Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. And in our mind's eye, we can actually realize these pastimes by hearing about Krishna's pastimes through bona fide sources, through the authorities, through that process of chanting his names in the manner the way Dukhi Krishna did, and other great sages just completely absorbed in Krishna's name. Krishna will reveal himself through this method of devotional service, bhakti yoga. So very inspirational. So I just thought I'd share with that with you. I didn't know what time I'd finish, but I finished a little bit early. So once again, if I've committed any offences in speaking about the lovely pastimes of Radha and Krishna, I beg for forgiveness. And does anybody have any questions, comments, corrections, additions? Yes, Sarah.
So the spiritual realm, the top spiritual realm that here is the spiritual realm around us all the time, what we can't see?
The spiritual realm, we're talking about Vrindavan, it's only where Krishna came, because 5,000 years ago, in the end of that last age, he manifested that realm in Vrindavan, and he brought everybody from the spiritual world with him and invited other people to come as well, other devotees who were purified in heart. So after he left, it's said that the Dham is there, but it became unmanifest to our eyes. Before it was there, we could see, we could actually walk in there if we had been there 5,000 years ago. But a lot of people who went there still didn't see Krishna as the supreme person of God because they didn't have the eyes to see him. They didn't, in their mind's eye, they didn't have that realization. So when you go to Vrindavan, it's still there, like that. It's just that we can realize this ourselves. We don't have to think, well, Krishna's going to come and see me, which he probably isn't, because we're still not purified enough. We're still contaminated by material energy. But throughout the course of time, Krishna did appear to the devotees, or Radharani appeared to the devotees as was needed. Sometimes some devotee like Madhavendra Puri, Grand Spiritual Master Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he'd be under a tree and he'd forget to eat, he'd be so absorbed in just remembering the pastimes of Krishna. And a little cowherd boy had come up in front of him. He said, "Oh, somebody told me there was a sage here under the tree. I brought you some milk because nobody goes hungry here." He said, "Oh, thank you very much." And he drank the milk, and then he just become totally manifest with ecstasy. His hair stand on it. "Well, what was in this milk?" And he goes, "That was Krishna that gave me the milk." So that happened quite a few times. So every now and then, Krishna comes from that place there. And but ultimately our real home is not there. That's still Goloka. That's called Gokula Vrindavan. The real place is Goloka Vrindavan, outside this material universe, where we go to once we shed the concept that we're these bodies completely, that we're on this, we're spirit souls, and to understand that we have to have the full realization of our connection with Krishna. So this is why this story was very nice about Dukhi Krishna, or Shyamananda Pandit. Actually, that story of Shyamananda Pandit continues on. That was just a small part of it, and then he had all these wonderful pastimes afterwards as Shyamananda Pandit, and that's described by Indradumna Maharaj in his lectures. If you ever want to look it up, or if we ever get an opportunity to talk about it, it's certainly worthwhile talking about. Any other questions or comments? People are starting to get a little bit hungry there. Breakfast is coming on. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.